With the Vikings at 8-1, stranglehold on the North, and now tied for first in the NFC as a whole, in the whole NFL, it's time to start talking about playoff seeding and looking forward to what could happen with the Vikings in the postseason. It's Twitter Tuesday here on the Locked On Vikings podcast.
You like that on 3, 1, 2, 3, you like it!
You are Locked On Vikings, your daily Minnesota Vikings podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's going on, everybody? Welcome to another episode of the Locked On Vikings podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. As always, I am your host, your pal, and the kid you copied off in math class. My name is Luke Braun. You can find me on Twitter at Luke Braun NFL. Show is on Twitter at Locked On Vikings. And thank you so much for making Locked On Vikings your first listen of the day. You can also catch this show on Amazon Fire Stick or Roku. If you have those, just download the Locked On Minnesota Sports app. Today's episode is brought to you by Prize Picks. Prize Picks is daily fantasy made easy. Pick 2 to 5 players, and if they score more or less than their Prize Picks projection, you can win 10 times your money on your entry. First-time users receive a 100% instant deposit match up to $100 with promo code LOCKEDON. That's prizepicks.com, promo code LOCKEDON. It's Twitter Tuesday today. If you have a question, you can always send it to me. You just leave one in the YouTube comments. If you're watching on YouTube, you can send it to me on Twitter at Luke Braun NFL or at Locked On Vikings, or you can send an email to lockedonvikingspodcast@gmail.com or fill out the Google form in the show notes. So the first one I'm going into comes from Jace Evers, who asks, what is our path to the 1 seed following Philly's loss to the Commies? So if you happen to miss Monday Night Football, the Philadelphia Eagles lost at home to the Washington Commanders. Amazingly, this makes the Vikings the only team without a home loss so far, which is a pretty cool accomplishment to be the last team in the league to lose at home. They have 3 home games coming up, so they will look to defend that title. But it also ties us with the Eagles. Now, they have head-to-head because they beat us, so 8-1 and 8-1. The Eagles would get the 1 seed if the playoffs started today. So the path is, from here on out, we have to win 1 more game than the Eagles do. It's pretty much that simple because we don't have tiebreakers. There are other weird ways to backdoor it where, like, if we do tie with the Eagles, but let's say we beat the Cowboys and then the Cowboys end up getting tiebreakers and beating the Eagles, or if the Eagles fall apart or something, and then it's the Cowboys that end up being the team that wins the NFC East, which is certainly not outside the realm of possibility. The Cowboys are looking tough. That's one way to backdoor it, right? Where the Cowboys can take it away. But it's really weird for the Eagles to be ahead of us, the Cowboys to be behind us, but the Cowboys then win the NFC East. You'd have to do really weird tiebreaker stuff there. And probably have everybody tied. So no, really we just have to win more games than the Eagles do. Pretty much zeros out from here and tie goes to them. Ben from MN says, who do we match up well against in the playoffs? I get that it's a little ways out, but looking at the current playoff picture, what matchup is advantageous to us? So looking at the current playoff picture as it stands now, the Vikings are the 2 seed. And sitting in the 4 seed is San Francisco, barely holding off, I think, the Commanders themselves. I kind of don't like either of those matchups. You also have a possible something going on with an NFC South team that could sneak into the 7th seed. Tampa's 5-5, and maybe the Falcons, they're a game out. You have other teams like the Rams and Packers that are a little bit further out, but if they have a surge, those are the teams we're looking at right now. Now, if the Vikings don't keep winning a whole bunch of games, they fall a little bit further. They could end up going up against New York or Dallas. I would say what we want, I hate playing good D-lines in the playoffs, just generally. I don't know if that's a Viking-specific matchup thing, because the tackles have been pretty good, especially, and the line's been better. But it's just always hard to play a good front 4 in the playoffs. So I would probably be a little bit scared of the upset from the Commanders or the Cowboys if they ended up being the matchup that comes to US Bank. So I guess that means, hey, if you end up going up against Seattle, let's say they fall out of first in the West, they end up with the 7th seed, or a team like New York. I don't think New York has the best pass rush right now, but super correct me if I'm wrong. I'm not very familiar with the Giants. But that's like the first place it goes. But here's the deal with all of it. You get into the postseason, you can't suck that bad. I know that there's been teams, there's been the Ryan Lindley Cardinals sometimes. There's been, the kind of king of a bad division thing going on. And with this 7 seed, we've had some teams that don't seem as real, but you're at least okay. You're not going to be a pushover. It's not going to be a cupcake. You don't get a cupcake playoff game. It's going to be someone good. They're going to have good stuff going for them. Even if it's the favorite team you could possibly run into, even if you're like, man, I would love to play the Commanders again. Taylor Heineke sucks. They still got that D-line. So there's no easy way out in the playoffs. You gotta be good teams, and you just kind of had, like, it's always going to be good. That's just reality. Jimbo Stimbo says, why in the third or early fourth quarter did it feel like we were featuring KJ Osborn as if he were Tyreek Hill, which was frustrating, but also kind of worked. That's just how the reads work out. So this is something we talked about a lot last year when there was all this like target discourse around Justin Jefferson. Right now, Justin Jefferson is getting targeted a ton because Kirk Cousins is like choosing to, because of the trust and all that stuff. And for the most part, we like this. But when it's suddenly another guy for a stretch, that's probably just luck. And it's just our brain looking at a pattern and saying, is there something to that? But it's probably just the way, it's just variance. But if you want to go play by play, and if you want to go through and find times where, man, KJ got targeted, but I really thought that should have been Jefferson, I think that's a good exercise to go through and see, like, if you can find those. On my watch, I didn't really. So I think it's just who happened to get open. A lot of it was, clear outs were taking guys down. Hawkinson, Jefferson himself, Thielen all did a great job on clear outs, kind of taking safeties off of it. And Osborne happened to be the guy running the middle route that time. Trill Swaggets asks, are you aware of the process of how refs are selected for the playoffs and if it takes blown calls into consideration? I hear O'Connell say, we'll send that to the league in press conferences when asked about controversial calls, but does anything come of that? Yes. The actual like scoring itself is all secret and proprietary, and it probably should stay that way. But my general understanding is if you screw up a call, if you screw up a game flow thing, if you are evaluated on your performance. Now, refs' performance is not just did they make the pass interference call that everybody agrees with, because those are more judgment calls, but it's more about stuff like missing that 12-man on the field penalty, or stuff like this review took too long and you didn't get the game flow to go right. A referee's job is a lot more than just being the eye in the sky that sees the fumble, whether he was down or not, But yes, basically then everybody gets scored, and the best refs get to do the Super Bowl, and then the next best refs get to do the championship, and so on and so forth. And I kind of hate that system because it splits everybody up. It doesn't say this crew gets to do, these games all together. It says, okay, this was the best line judge, so we're putting the best line judge in the Super Bowl and the best back judge in the Super Bowl and all that. And now they haven't worked together, and that can cause some problems. So I don't really like that system, but that's the way it works. I have a ton more questions here, and I want to make sure that I get to all of them. But first, let me talk to you about DFS, Daily Fantasy. It's a tough world in Daily Fantasy. If you're a super sharp, you can maybe enter a pool of 6,500 people and find a way to make it into something, but most people don't play like that, and I don't find it very fun at all. Instead, how about Prize Picks? Prize Picks is Daily Fantasy made easy. You just pick a few of your favorite players and whether they'll do more or less than their Prize Picks projection. Will Kirk Cousins get more or less than 250 yards? Something like that. If you are right, you can win up to 10 times your money. And it's not just NFL, it's NBA, it's NHL, it's go all the way to cricket and tennis. Could be anything. At prizepicks.com or on the Prize Picks app. And on your first entry, use promo code LOCKEDON to get a 100% deposit match up to $100. That's promo code LOCKEDON for a 100% first deposit match up to $100 at prizepicks.com or on the Prize Picks app. I also want to talk to you about keeping your home safe, and for that, there is no better option than Simply Safe. Over the holidays, property crimes like burglaries and package thefts spike. And that's why Simply Safe Home Security is offering 50% off of their award-winning security system so y'all can feel safe and secure this holiday season. And in the event of an emergency, Simply Safe has 24/7 professional monitoring agents that use Fast Protect technology exclusively from Simply Safe to capture critical evidence and verify that the threat is real and not just like the cat walking in the wrong room. So you can get a priority response from the proper authorities. And with the top rated Simply Safe app, you can stay in complete control of your system anytime and anywhere. Arm or disarm or unlock for a guest, access your cameras, whatever. Don't miss your chance to save big on the only security system that I can recommend. Get 50% off of any new Simply Safe system at simplysafe.com/LockedOnNFL today. That's SIMPLI safe.com/LockedOnNFL. There is no safe like Simply Safe. Thank you so much for making Locked On Vikings your first listen of the day. For your second listen, check out Locked On Sports Today. You can find me on there a bunch since the Vikings are good, but they cover all sports on Locked On Sports Today, not just football. It's daily podcast covering everything. And also check me out on Patreon, patreon.com/LukeBraunNFL. Should be getting some stuff from the Bills game up on there shortly. Film breakdowns. I'm probably going to do all the big game, the big plays, maybe a Kirk Cousins one, maybe a Harrison Phillips one. Haven't quite decided yet, but there will be something, and it will be much more in-depth than you can find in a format like this. But a format like this is perfect for a mailbag. So let's keep going with Twitter Tuesday. Theorist asks, what was the deal with Ingram stepping on Cousins' foot multiple times? So I got to look at this a little bit closer, and I'm definitely going to have this be part of some Patreon post or other. But the first step, especially in a run play, and I believe both of those were run plays or play action, which so it's the same footwork, is really important. And we even saw Bradbury get tripped up by the same mistake earlier this season from Ingram, Ingram got tripped up because his foot was in the wrong spot and then Bradbury stepped on it. But basically, if you're a puller, especially, you have to have your foot needs to turn 90 degrees on that first step. You kind of have to get your foot turned with that first step. It doesn't need to even move anywhere. You just have to turn it. And he didn't do a very good job of that. And then there was one where he just set up shop a little bit too far back with his first step, and he kind of used it as like a push-off foot, and you shouldn't need that. So getting that out of that's a habit he has to break. And that backward step got onto Cousins' foot, and he tripped. So it's a footwork thing. It's a drilling it problem that hopefully will come with experience. Coach D says improbable or situational masters. I like that. He says, before the end zone fumble, I said to my fiance, they got to get out of the end zone. That's a very specific situation, and it looked like the Vikings had practiced it and the Bills hadn't. That's a really interesting way to look at that goal line fumble. Dan Orlovsky did a breakdown, I think on just like ESPN, of the snap and kind of the mechanics of it. And he did mention in that the Bills don't run under center a lot. And I don't think they had been under center that entire game. So somebody pointed that out to me, and I didn't vet it, but it sounds right. So that makes sense, right? They're a shotgun team normally, and B, Josh Allen, who, if you remember from all of the elbow talk going into the week, was dealing with an elbow injury that has a history of affecting grip strength. Now, based on Orlovsky's breakdown, I don't think that's what happened, but that would be a reason to maybe not run as under center as much throughout the game and then not be as comfortable under center when you have no choice but to be under center because you're in a QB sneak situation trying to get out of the back of your own end zone. So maybe they look like they didn't practice under center. I don't think they did. And that might be a health thing. That might be a scheme thing. But either way, yeah, that particular decision bit the Bills in the butt a little bit, and to an impact that's probably a little bit more subject to variance, like just how impactful that can be. A botched snap, you can have that on a random 1st and 10, recover it, and all you lost was a down. In that one, they lost a surefire win. That's one of those factors of variance. But those kind of things, those butterfly effect things, is how games like this are decided. Andrew Marrero says 2009 Vikings versus 2022 Vikings. Who are you taking? I gotta go with 2009. That team was stacked. These Vikings are playing great, but I think they're closer to the 2017 team where they're a very good team with a great record, and are overachieving in that way, just as coach. But the 2009 Vikings were truly, truly a team that you went into the season going, these guys are stacked, and then they played stacked kind of week in and week out. PD Bissinger asks, it seemed like maybe the interior pass rush, I assume you mean pass blocking, stepped it up after Darrisaw's injury. Have you seen enough tape to either confirm or contradict? I don't know if there's a big change after Darrisaw's injury that happened. Blake Brandel did a really good job. He was certainly, we lost Darrisaw Island, so I guess there was a change in like difficulty, and they had to keep it up through that. But I don't think that there was like I think the interior just like had a pretty good game, and front to back with Darrisaw next to them or not. Connor M says there was a play where Kirk seemed to avoid the rush and just chuck it, almost eyes closed for a completion. When do we start talking? I love this. I have no idea which play you're talking about because it could be like 6 of them. That was an unreal game. When do we start talking about O'Connell being the difference maker and unlocking him just like he said he would when he was hired? I think we absolutely can talk about that. I think we've been able to talk about that for a couple weeks now. The quieted mind thing, being able to coax him into being a little bit more aggressive, being able to just speak in a quarterback's language instead of in a defensive coach's language, trying to translate defensive thoughts to quarterback language, just being more comfortable. And then I think, Mike Zimmer just didn't want to be with Kirk Cousins, and Kevin O'Connell does. So that's part of it too. And I think, all of that, absolutely. Kirk Cousins is playing a different brand of ball this year and to very good ends. I don't think you can dispute that. And what's the major thing that changed, right? So I love it. I was definitely skeptical when he said that. You're like, okay, you're going to fix the 10-year vet, right? Like, I didn't think so. But I also always made sure to follow that up with, but of course you get a chance, right? I'll give you a chance to, and here we are. Love it. We have more questions coming up, but first, let me talk to you about the best tasting protein bar on the planet. Built Bar is covered in 100% chocolate, and they have all kinds of new flavors. Cookie dough topper, coconut brownie topper, coconut brownie bar. Those coconut brownie ones are big hits, so get them while you can. They've got a white chocolate peppermint granola, maybe a little bit more appropriate for the holiday season, candy cane brownie. Getting a little seasonal with it. But the deal is that all sounds like, the kind of indulgent treat that you have to talk about, but maybe not tell your calorie notebook. No. 130 calories on one of these bad boys. 17 grams of protein and stupid low on sugar and calories. It is absolutely delicious. You got to try it. Go get 15% off of your order right now by going to built.com and entering promo code LOCKEDON15. That's LOCKEDON15 at built.com to get 15% off of your order. Moving on with this Twitter Tuesday mailbag. Have a whole bunch more questions, so I'm sorry if I don't get to yours. I probably won't get to all of these, but we'll do our best. Stezo asks, has Kirk done enough to get another extension this offseason? And if not, what else does he need to do? So if I had to make the decision right now, and I don't, which is important, I would probably do some kind of half measure 1 year thing, like, give it another year, but maybe no trade clause, give it flexibility. You'd have to probably straddle some line. But here's the deal. The way that Cousins has played, if he does that for the rest of the season, I think no-brainer extend him. I don't even think that that's an argument. So what does he need to do? Keep it up. I think it's really, if you play like this, especially the way he's played the last 4 games, I think you can. I'll take that forever. I'll take that in perpetuity. The last 4 games of Kirk Cousins, absolutely. But we got to have no more Eagles game stuff. We got to have no more first half of the Bills game stuff, right? Get that out of there. But if you can do what you did in the last half of the Buffalo game, I said it in either the postcast or the recap Monday show, and I forget. I'll say it again. That was a championship level of play. That was that the third quarter kind of on through overtime from Kirk Cousins is the level of quarterback play that wins Super Bowls. Give me that and keep that up, and you get a blank check, dude. Zachary Foltz says, is Chris Boyd buried that deep on the depth chart that Duke Shelley comes in before him, or did they split it up between left and right corner, so he's basically just Pat P's backup? So I don't really have a way to check on this. That's a really interesting idea, and I would love to see somebody ask about it. But I don't really know. Duke Shelley did pretty well. I mean, he was only in for 2 snaps, so whatever. But I guess he was that buried. He's been a baller on special teams, though, so he'll always be able to dress on game day. So I wish I had a better answer for you. What I can say is that Andrew Booth does appear to have been just like truly benched. I looked at his last rep and all the reps leading up to it. It was a really, really bad showing from Andrew Booth. I think we learned why he hasn't been playing over a Caleb Evans. Caleb Evans absolutely has been better than Andrew Booth was in that like quarter and a half about. So there's that. But then when Booth got benched, Shelley comes in instead of Chris Boyd. That is a little bit surprising. Maybe they just like Duke Shelley. He's a new guy to the team. So I don't know where they slot him in on that depth chart, but Boyd's killing it on special teams. So he'll always have that going for him. Dangerously Unqualified asks, before the bye, some were calling for Ed Donatel to be fired in his first year. They have since been silenced with many huge games and plays on defense. Have we reached our defense's ceiling, or will improvement continue as our players are more used to their new roles? I think they about are who they are. I think the like growing pains stuff is mostly behind them now, or at least the stuff that I was talking about when I would talk about it, when I would say, they're misplacing themselves on zones, they're screwing up pass offs. That is mostly behind them, and now the plays that are made against them, like in this Buffalo game, so much of the production came on, oh my God, Josh Allen is insane plays, and it's like, okay, that's just a good player being better than your defense because he's Josh Allen. That's not like a scheme familiarity thing. That's just like guys getting beat on matchups, and the last few games have felt more like what win or lose, it's because of the matchups. So I think they about are who they are. But yeah, I mean, I was really critical of Donatel, and I do think he could have called plays a little bit differently to kind of paper over the moments where the Vikings weren't quite sound. I do hold to that critique, but it's a moot point now. But people saying that, like, I got a question every week about should he be fired, that was always going to be premature. You got to give people at least the year, right? Like, we're not firing anybody in their first year in October. Ruben Frost asks, why no spying Allen from Donatello? Would mean getting rid of a pressure man or coverage man, which we couldn't afford to do. Yes, precisely. Josh Allen on the run is lethal in the pass, and trying to defend that with even one less guy would probably have led to even more production than the scrambles did. He scrambled quite a bit, and I think we just have to be a little bit better at being aware of that and having like rush angles on him. But I think taking a guy out of the coverage to spy him probably isn't the move. I feel like Josh Allen's a little bit too good to be able to punish that even more than he can punish just like straight up man coverage. Zachary Hayes asks, was Blake Brandel good? Because I didn't notice him, and that's usually a good thing for a lineman. Yes, I think he was genuinely like pretty good. In relief for Christian Darrisaw out with a concussion. Might have to have Blake Brandel in this coming game, depending on how concussion protocol goes. We won't really know anything about that until practice reports come out later this week. But yeah, he played pretty well, and it wasn't just like, oh, they hit him and he like didn't screw anything up. No, he had some pretty good blocks on zone runs to his side. Good pass blocks. I think he gave up one. I can't remember if it was a pressure or a sack, and that was the only thing I noticed, which is not half bad for playing. I think the last play that Christian Darrisaw was in on was the 81-yard touchdown. So that whole offensive explosion and all that stuff we were talking about with coming back and all that, that was all Brandel. Solid game. Cho asks, was that objectively the best catch of all time? You all know which thing he's asking about. No, it's the Tyree catch. A lot of people will say that, well, you're just saying that because of the stakes. And I think, I don't think you can divorce this from the stakes. A regular season game is just never going to be as cool as something that happens in the Super Bowl. And the Tyree catch was honestly like harder. And I'm sure if you did take all the stakes away, there's probably something that happened in a random regular season game where you stole it away from somebody, or, some tip drill thing that's way cooler. But sure is up there. That's certainly one of the coolest catches I've ever seen in my life. Purple Haze asks, a lot of my friends are saying that the JJ catch isn't actually better than the OBJ catch because the defender helped him. Any merit to their claim? What? He was trying to take the ball away. What, do you think he just gave it to him? No. So I watched this a bunch trying to see what they were talking about. And I think you had like one hand on the ball. Jefferson has one hand on the ball, and the D-back has two hands on the ball. Coming away with the ball in that situation is absolute dominance, and it is insane, and it is so cool that he didn't help anything. He was, if anything, trying to take the ball away. Yeah, I probably are just watching it too much in slow mo. Hugo says, "Is it reasonably an all-in season?" Not really. I mean, how many pieces of this team aren't under contract next year? Patrick Peterson, Dalvin Tomlinson. Trying to think of other ones. Harrison Smith is under contract. I mean, you got guys that might get cut for cap reasons, like Thielen or Cook, or we can talk about that later. But they are over the cap, which they weren't. But now that they have TJ Hawkinson, they figure to be over the cap. It's a very solvable problem. You might even be able to solve it by extending Hawkinson himself and just fixing it within that contract. So, no, I don't think that it is all in such that if they don't win the Super Bowl, they will be feeling punishing effects for years to come of this season. It's just a good year. And what's really cool? A whole bunch of pieces come back, and maybe we can do the same thing next year and have another good year. And maybe we can just be a good team and not stop thinking in this world of having one year that's the good one and all the rest of them have to funnel all their resources into that year so we can go all in. We don't have to live in a dichotomy where you're either trying to win or you're not. You can try to win every year. Casey Drew asks, do you believe Kirk has been making less adjustments at the line since Hawkinson has been added? I believe yes, but I don't think it's because of that. I think it's just a matchup thing, and it's just the looks that the defense has been giving him. The one where I noticed it the most was against Chicago, and they just kept giving him single high looks. And I think what they were doing at the line was Cousins had a single high beater in the can, ready to audible to, and the Bears just kind of kept activating that, and that just happens to be the way it goes. But hey, sometimes they give you the look that's perfect for the play you already had called, so you don't have to audible to any. You know what I mean? So I think it's just a factor of that, not necessarily Hawkinson, just something that's happened the last couple games. And finally, a follow-up to that, how much has Cousins' ability to switch in and out of plays at the line of scrimmage helped the Vikings offense this season? How often has he done it, and how effective has he been? So this is a very effective thing, but like I kind of mentioned, it is sort of contingent on the defense giving you the right front and the right look. But it's been really cool. I think this is more Kevin O'Connell is just more equipped as a play caller than Clint Kubiak was most recently, in the ability to call two plays at once. I don't think Clint was doing that. I don't think there was a play for Kirk to switch to. I don't think it was like a trust thing. I don't think it was like a we don't have faith in your ability to read pre-snap. I think it was more a Clint Kubiak just can't call two plays at once because he's a baby child, and that's not a very good play caller. But Cousins' ability to see things pre-snap, and if you can get him to the line with 10 seconds to really process, you sort of get rid of the most uncomfortable part for Kirk Cousins, which is that ticking clock. That's where a lot of his problems over his whole career has come from that clock being too fast or too slow, that internal pressure clock. Well, how about a clock right in front of you so you know exactly how much time you have, and nobody's coming at you while you're making these decisions because it's pre-snap. I think that's a really good place for Kirk Cousins, and definitely that's meat on the bone that previous offensive play callers have just not been able to get. So yeah, I think that's been a huge thing in general. But if it doesn't come up because you don't get the fronts, you're not going to get that every game. Okay. So tomorrow we'll talk about some of the film things. I got some stuff I want to follow up on just from this mailbag and some other stuff, and then we go into Cowboys mode. Awesome stuff. I will see you guys all tomorrow with all of that. Check out Locked On Sports Today. Check me out on Patreon. And as always, Skull.